Well, if you've been watching any of my videos, you probably realize that I have a detestment for people or organizations or anybody that tries to rewrite history. Whenever you look at just the facts of history, sure, you can twist it in a little bit of this light or in that light. If you're looking from one group of people back at another, you can get some twisting a little bit on, but there gets to a point of twisting that gets disgusting. And one of the big trends that's been happening, I don't know, it's been going on for a while. I remember years ago whenever Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer were taken out of classrooms because it talked about engines in there, and as being not fully peoples, and it also talked about Nigger Joe, and oh, you can't have that and everything. And it's really taking away from a heritage of something that actually did happen. And to whitewash it by taking it away from the past and trying to minimize what its effect was in the past is not going to help in any way, shape, or form either. Only far, far, far down the road, you'll be able to look back, and people that didn't know will probably say something along that line, but it won't be true, or it won't be factual either. And so you're trying to make people later in history live a lie. And that doesn't sound like a good thing to do for anybody. It harkens to the Dark Ages, whenever people are all supposed to be dumb and know exactly the truth that's going on. Here's something that kind of gets disgusting. Laura Ingalls Wilder, her name has been removed from a book award over racism concerns. Now, her books have been out forever and ever, but they had these concerns, and so the American Library Association changes its award name from the Laura Ingalls Wilder Award. And they did this because of her expressions of stereotypical attitudes in books. Now, most of us remember Little House on the Prairie. I don't know if you did, but I got read this during third and fourth grade, and basically read about 5 of the books, and it made me want to go ahead and read the rest of them. I think it was only 4 of the books, maybe 5. And but Little House on the Prairie, Little House in the Big Woods, and so on. And we got to watch these kids grow up and stuff. And I don't know if you've ever watched Dancing with the Stars, but the little girl right out here out front actually was on that. You can see her all grown up and everything now. So anyhow, Little Joe on the left from Ponderosa all the way through, and I remember him dying from pancreatic cancer whenever I was a kid, and it was one of the things I couldn't understand, and had to have a life lesson there and learn about what cancer really was. And so anyhow, the disgusting thing that could probably happen is that later in life somebody could take and change things, and that wouldn't be appropriate or right. And so let's just read this to you. A division of the American Library Association has voted to remove the name of Laura Ingalls Wilder from a major children's book award over concerns about how the author portrayed African Americans and Native Americans. Now, the board of the Association for Library Service to Children, the ALSC, made the unanimous decision to change the name on Saturday at a meeting in New Orleans. The name of the prize was changed from the Laura Ingalls Wilder Medal to the Children's Literacy Legacy Award. Children's Literature Legacy Award. And that could be it, but it's the Laura Ingalls Wilder Medal. You listen, people, so there's a Thomas Jefferson Award, and you're not going to take that away from him because he once had slaves and perhaps even had sex with one of them. No, there has to be a point to this stupidity about wanting to change facts or the way people look at people now. Well, now that blacks are all domesticated and up and we're trying to give them a good chance, there's still a lot of problems, definite, evident problems. And with what they're doing now with trying to misappropriate other cultures, like say they were Egyptians, they're Hebrews and stuff, rather than the West Africans that are non-related to any of those people that they actually are, is refueling racism incredibly here in America. But they're really getting serious about it. It's like a mass delusion situation. But in that fact, though, people are trying to be all, walk on pins and needles about things like this. And, oh, it's racist to say all these things. Well, things that were said in the past, you can't change. Well, I'll be damned, you can. In fact, you can go ahead and penalize somebody later for something they would be totally unaware of during their lifetime. During her lifetime, Indians were looked at as being somewhat savages, that they had never really progressed, and they were somewhat primitive. Negroes were the same way, and to this day in sub-Saharan Africa, they are the most primitive people on the world, And so you can't say anything is wrong or incorrect in what is done, but then again, in nowadays modern time, oh, it's racist. Well, reality is racist. History is racist. Look, history doesn't have an agenda. It just is. Facts and truth don't have an agenda. It's just the way that it is. I mean, there has to be, or maybe, I don't know, there didn't have to be, but in the way the world that we live in right now in reality worked out, there were some primitive people we ran into as we were colonizing the earth. And instead of killing them all off, we've kept them alive and tried to help bring them up to our level. I believe everybody understands that to be the exact concept of what went on. And you can't look back at it now and go, no, no, you can't. It's not appropriate. Politically correct can go screw itself. It's not appropriate to not be correct. The way it was is the way it was. The way it is the way that it is. And the amazing difference between the way that it was and the way that it is was made by decisions made by Caucasians that run this great country of America. They made the decision. No one else. But now we have some type of freaky white guilt going on, and everybody's got to be on pins and needles about what's said, and you've got to prop up black people. Oh man, you got to prop them up. The first award was given to Wilder in 1954 for her contributions. The ALSC said Wilder's work continued to be published and read, but her legacy is complex and not universally embraced. Yet it became an American staple, and with the TV show that was on and everybody watched it, it was part of wholesome America, where it was, like Leave It to Beaver, or one of those things where you can look at back whenever things were bad, there were people that were wholesome, people that made good decisions, and this is what led us to where we are now, giving us a good example. Now, maybe it's not a good example to have called them Injuns, right? Maybe it's not a good example to call them previously freed slave, which is what she does, and they say, oh, that makes people, that, she portrayed black people in a bad light. And it's like, no, that's reality. The person she talked about was a previously freed slave. She said something else in one of her books one time. She said, talking to two different people, that there are no people out here, only Indians. Now, this rose a stink, just like mentioning, Nigger Joe or any of those things. It actually rose a stink. And she goes, well, it's a paraphrasing of things. If we were two people are talking together that are the same race and of the same evolutionary level, and instead of her using the word savages, she just said, there's no people like us here, only Indians. Like us could just be put in parentheses from then on. Or there are no people could be changed, which is what she did, to settlers. only Indians, which it means the same thing, but it doesn't paint them in such a bad light. Little things like this that are very nitpicky can become so important. You can take in heritage like somebody like Laura Ingalls Wilder and throw it in the trash and change an award that was meant to be an award for something great that she had done, take her greatness and chunk it in the trash and take her award away because of a couple of words that were used commonplace back then. In fact, much, much, much worse words were used by great people. And those words are still around, yet this has got to be picked to death. She was born in 1867 and died in 1957. She's best known for her 8 Little House on the Prairie novels. Yeah, it's 8. And we saw 5 of them. I got the other 3, so I was right. About pioneer life in the American West. They were published between 1932 and 1943. In 2010, the British broadcaster Samira Ahmed wrote for The Guardian, Wilder has a special status in American culture despite posthumous allegations of racism. The Osage Nation, according to the biographer Pamela Smith Hill, still condemns her work, which was based on their eviction. Right? The novels are full of phrases that are unacceptable today. Even in her own lifetime, Wilder apologized for her thoughtlessness and amended a line in Little House on the Prairie that said Kansas had no people, only Indians. It now reads no settlers, only Indians. And that's the same meaning, but it takes away from the idea that she's trying to say that Indians are savages. And her intent, whenever she wrote it, was to say that Indians still are at that time, considered a unevolved or more savage people. I talked to a guy one time about, and he's an Indian, straight up. And I talked to him about the Washington Redskins. This was 25 years ago now. And they were starting to have a stink about that. And I had enough nuts because we were talking. And I mentioned that to him. And he goes, I consider it to be something to be proud of. I wish there were more teams that were named after to keep our heritage going. Maybe the sports places in the areas where we used to live. So you could have a Comanche and a Navajo and things like that. That would let you know the heritage that was there before. I don't blame anything on the white people. If I was in their position, I would have done the same thing. I said, man, that is refreshing to hear from, the dogma that we live in. And he goes, it's reality. And I'm thinking, wow, this dude must be some philosophical something. And he sat there and patted me on the shoulder and walked off. And it kind of blew me away. I remember thinking about it, and in my life I've thought about it quite a few times. And it's just the way certain people look at certain things. You can be adamant about what happened that got you to where you are now, or you could be grateful for the opportunity to even be here. Certain people look at things from a yin, and others seem to have a yang going on. Anyhow, like, share, and subscribe, guys, and there's more coming on this, because I just found out there's National Geographic just went all tard and put out a thing that goes pseudoscience and totally disavows all of the science that's been in genetics for the last 50 years and throws it, actually over 100 years, and just throws it in the dump. Peace.